Hey guys, my name is Shrish. So a few weeks ago, I made a very weird decision and I bought the iPad 7 generation. Now, I know that decision was probably wrong because I should have waited for the iPad 8 generation or I should have bought the cheaper iPad 6 gen because there is not a lot of difference between the iPad 6 gen and 7 gen, the very base models. Did I make a mistake? Well, yes, I definitely did. I most certainly did a mistake by buying the iPad 7 generation because as a person who reviews a lot of tech, specs are really important to me. And I literally bought a device which doesn't really have the best specs at the moment. And I should have waited for something new. So yes, I did a mistake, but do I regret it? Well, not really. Because the experience with the iPad has just been phenomenal for me. And I'll just walk you through my entire experience with the iPad 7 generation in this video. So yeah, without any further ado, let's get into this. So yes, my experience with the iPad was definitely great, but it was not all rainbows and sunshine. Like firstly, the iPad doesn't have an anti-glare coating, and while the display in my initial impressions video I said that it is like really great, I really love the Retina display on this iPad. Like everything is good, it has like great brightness, it gets incredibly bright, but obviously when I use the device over time in different scenarios, I did feel that the lack of anti-glare coating does ruin your experience to a certain extent. There are times when I'm actually using the iPad outdoors or near a giant window or a light source, and in those cases using the iPad gets a little bit tough. Like it's still usable, like if you have used a budget Android device then everything is pretty usable. But yeah, overall the experience is not really that much good because of the lack of anti-glare coating. But again, if you intend to use the iPad mainly indoors and you can live with a little bit of reflection thing happening all over your display, then this thing is not really an issue as such. But I just thought of pointing it out because that was just my experience, that even though I planned to use this thing indoors, there were some situations when I was forced to use the device outdoors, and in those cases I just it's one of those things that you like feel that it should have been better, but it's totally fine the way they are actually. By the way, I have been using this 360 protection from Gadget Shields. So I've been using this across multiple devices and I went for the same 360 transparent protection for my iPad as well. So basically it protects the iPad from scratches, and it's not exactly like a screen protector, it's much more better and high quality than that. Like it is sort of a very different kind of material that's used. And if in case you have an iPad or if in case you have any sort of different device or mobile device, you should definitely check out Gadget Shields. I'll make sure to drop their link in the description box below. I personally have been using their skins and screen protectors for a while now, and they're totally worth it. Apart from that, the quality of the front camera, it's not really that much good. And now I know a lot of people might be like, why do you need a camera in an iPad? And I'm not really talking about the rear camera. I totally ignore that part of the device. But the front camera is much more usable and it's much more crucial these days because of the work from home thing happening all over. So a lot of people might need the iPad for let's say video conference, and in those cases if you are not in a very well lit environment, then the overall video conferencing experience is not really going to be that good. But again, this is one of those things that I saw coming at me, so I was not really surprised with the quality. But for someone, if you do plan to use this device for video conferencing or video calls, then just do know that the experience is not really going to be any good. So these were the things that actually ruined my almost perfect experience with the iPad. But then as far as the core aspects of a tablet go, like the battery life, the performance, and the software, this thing is actually an excellent device in my opinion. Now in my initial impressions video with the iPad, I stated that the battery life on the iPad is just bonkers. But I knew that at some point the battery life would degrade, and that's what has happened. But don't take the degrade word, like I guess that's a very harsh word to actually describe the battery life on the iPad. But yes, after stacking up all my applications and all my data, the battery life has taken a minor hit, but it's just minor hit, like to be honest. So far the screen on time that I get with the iPad is almost about 8 to 9 hours, which is obviously impressive with this device. And my usage with the iPad mostly comprises of a lot of media consumption, a lot of browsing, a lot of scripting, and a lot of other work related stuff like making presentations and stuff. And along with that, I do occasionally game as well. So overall for my usage, the battery life on the iPad is actually excellent. And in fact, once I charge this iPad to 100%, it really takes a lot of time to get it to zero. I don't even remember the last time I drained the battery on the iPad to below 10% or 5%. Like it's that good of a track record. Now the aspect that I was most skeptical about before buying the iPad was the performance. And I'm really happy to report that the performance on the iPad is really impressive. Like, I did not expect it to be this good. I knew that the Apple chips are way more future-proof as compared to Android, and they actually perform way better than Android phones. But to this extent, I didn't really see that. Like, this thing is having a chip that was launched in 2016, I guess, and still so far I haven't really seen any lag or stutter. And that's quite unlike where I come from. Like, I came from the Android devices where lags and stutters is very common, but it's not really been the case with the iPad. I'm not saying, or I'm not denying, that you won't really find any stutters at all. Obviously there will be some situations because hardware, it gets outdated at some point. But the best part is that the software backs it all up for the hardware. In fact, if you are a student, if you just want something to take notes on, if you want something that can handle all your work related stuff, if you just want to do all the basic stuff, then I'm pretty sure that the performance on this thing will never be an issue, at least for the next 5 years, I guess. Like, I don't know if that's exaggerating, but the performance is actually pretty good. But there is a problem associated with the chip. Now, because this is a very older chip, it is not really that much good when it comes to the thermals. So yeah, the iPad does heat if you are, let's say, playing PUBG or PES 2020 or games, or very graphic intensive games like that. So it might heat, but the best part is that when you hold the iPad, let's say from this angle, the heat generated is mostly on this part. Like, you don't really feel any sort of heat while playing games because the heat mostly it's generated in the central part. So even though the iPad will heat at some point, it didn't really ruin my experience that much. But yeah, there is going to be heat, just be prepared about that. And then the most important aspect of the iPad, the operating system, or the iPad OS. Now, in my opinion, Apple with the iPad OS has managed to successfully create a middle ground between a smartphone and a computer. Now let's also answer this question. Is it a laptop replacement? Well, not really. There are a lot of stuff that you can actually do better on a laptop, but that's all the heavy stuff like video editing and all. But as far as the basic stuff goes, you can do that pretty much on any iPad out there. Like, the iPad OS is designed and built in a certain way that it actually gives you the best of both worlds. But then again, it's not really a computer or a laptop, and it shouldn't really be a computer or a laptop in my opinion, because then what's the point in buying a tablet? The way I see all of this is, there's smartphone, there's tablet, and there's computer. If you want to buy a computer or a laptop, then go for a laptop or a computer. You don't really need a tablet. But if you want best of both worlds, let's say a little bit of smartphone and a little bit of computer, then a tablet is definitely a device that you should go for. Now, stuff like multitasking, switching through applications, browsing, all of this stuff is extremely seamless and fun to use. But apart from that, if we talk about the optimizations, now that's where I think any Apple device takes the trophy. Like, the optimizations on this thing are so ridiculously good that, see, this iPad has like 3 GB of RAM, and I've used Android devices with 6 GB of RAM. But still, this iPad somehow manages to match that, or even in some cases provide better RAM management than those devices. There are instances when I just relaunch an application that I was using the previous day, and it successfully manages to launch it without reloading, and that's just insane for a device with 3 GB of RAM. And also the performance thing I talk about, the lag-free experience, the very seamless experience, the credit for that as well goes down to the optimizations on the iPad OS. So now the question, should you buy the iPad 7th generation in 2020? At this moment, not really. You shouldn't really go for this one because the iPad 8th generation is really close. And I think that would be a major overhaul and a major upgrade over the 7th generation or over the 6th generation as well. And you don't really want to buy a product that has sort of outdated specifications. But then you would ask, why did I buy it? Well, what happened was basically I desperately needed a mobile device that I can rely on. Now, I constantly buy and sell smartphones to run this channel. So there are times when I actually don't have any phone at all. Like, for example, I spent, I guess, 15 days without a smartphone during this quarantine, and that was really horrible. It not just made my life a lot more difficult, but it was actually very frustrating to live without a smartphone as well. And then again, my family members as well, they wanted a device sort of like a semi-computer, if I have to term it. And that's where this device came into play, and I couldn't really wait any longer. And at that time, I really wanted to go for the iPad 6th generation, because I've seen people getting the iPad 6th generation for 22,000 rupees, and for that price the iPad 6th generation is just like a great deal overall. But when I decided to buy the iPad 6th generation was selling for 27,000 rupees, and the only variant I was able to see available was the rose gold variant, which I don't really like. So I just went on and bought the iPad 7th generation for the extra 1 GB of RAM and space gray. So yeah, that was my story and my experience. If you own an iPad, let me know how your experience has been so far. And yeah, that's it for this video. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you for watching.